Joining me now, CNN political commentator Cupp, senior legal analyst Elie Honig, and Lauren Leader. She is co-founder and CEO of All In Together. I want to start with the documents, Elie. And again, the investigation will determine how they got there, who put them there, who knew they were there, whether Joe Biden knew they were there or not. And that may determine whether this is nothing at all or something that is worth further investigating. But for Merrick Garland, how does this change his life?
The big winner here is Donald Trump. Let's just be clear. It's a windfall for Donald Trump yet again. But here's why. If we were to take all of the relevant factors that a prosecutor would be looking at and just list them in a checklist, number of documents, level of classification, were they cooperative? Did they obstruct? Some of those would be bad for Joe Biden based on what we know. Some would be neutral. More of them would be worse for Donald Trump, I think it's safe to say, based on what we know right now. But let's remember who makes this decision. Yes, we have this U.S. attorney from Illinois who's doing the investigation. On one hand, special counsel doing the other investigation, but ultimately Merrick Garland makes both of these decisions. Now, is Merrick Garland, the famously cautious, the famously allergic to politics, Merrick Garland, going to end up in a situation where he gives the current president, his current boss, a pass, but he indicts not just the former president, but the guy running against his own boss right now? I don't know Merrick Garland personally, but based on what I do know, that is really difficult for me to see.
All right, Elie, what you just heard was the sound of a lot of people, largely Democrats, throwing things at their TV at you right now, saying, Elie Honig, he's playing whataboutism now. What Donald Trump did, even the limited amounts we know of both cases, is just very, very different. He was subpoenaed several times. He didn't turn it over. He obstructed. He did this. He did that, allegedly. How can you say that this is now the case that Merrick Garland would treat them similarly?
Yeah, it's not whataboutism, it's real worldism. Merrick Garland, look, the platonic ideal of the prosecutor, which in many ways Merrick Garland is, would not take into account anything other than the documents on his desk, the hard legal analysis. But that's not reality. We live in reality. And you have to think about, and Merrick Garland certainly thinks about, how is this going to look? How is this going to be received? How is this going to impact the way people regard the Justice Department? I guarantee you he's thinking about
He's also got a beyond a reasonable doubt issue
Yes, he does.
in an actual courtroom,
of course,
if he does press charges. Cupp, the political side of this. Republicans, some are saying, okay, this is now a thing. We're going to look into this. But don't they then, those same Republicans, have an issue if they were silent about Donald Trump? Or wouldn't they also then have to say, if Biden does it and it's bad, it was bad when Trump did it too?
What you're talking about is something called hypocrisy. And it's not something that this, Republican majority now has been all that interested in or bothered by. And if I know this Republican majority, and I think I do, I have no doubt they're going to make a lot of this. And let me be real fair here. This might be very bad. Classified documents should be handled very, very carefully. I don't care if you have an R next to your name or a D next to your name. This could be bad. It could also just be a mistake that happens. It could be someone did something stupid. We don't know yet, and we need to know more. But one thing we do know is the ways in which these two gentlemen handled these classified documents in the wake of revelations that they were not where they needed to be. And if the classified documents system is basically an honor system, we trust that you'll keep them where they need to be and not take them, to your home or your office. One man has acted honorably, and one man has not acted honorably. One man has said, look, I found these things that you didn't even know I had, and I want you to now do what's right with them. And another man made people run around in circles looking for them and insisted he didn't have them. I mean, those are the facts that we have right now, and we need to know more. But we should take a skeptical eye, just as skeptical an eye to this as we did to the documents that Trump took.
Right. And
I
think, look, politically, Biden's about to come back to a very different Washington than he left before he went to Mexico. I mean, the reality is that for the first time in his presidency, he's now facing the opposing party in a leadership role in the House. And part of their obligation is investigations, and they are clearly going to take that very seriously. We had over the weekend members of the Republican caucus say that they were already planning to impeach Biden on what grounds we don't know, but that was clearly high on their list. And this is absolutely red meat for the base. They will spend the next 2 years screaming about this in the same way that Hillary's emails, despite various other points of hypocrisy and other people in the Trump administration who handled emails in similar manner. It doesn't matter because it plays to the base. It plays to this whataboutism, which is part of what has made the politics of this Republican conference work.
But
they do this again
here's
and
what's
again.
been good so far. You've got folks like Jim Himes, Democrats, who have said, yeah, we should look at this.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
doing what Republicans did, which was, there's nothing to see here. Trump is perfect,
That's right.
and this is all political.
That's right.
The Republican tactic, I think we actually saw an interesting example of this earlier tonight. We had a Republican congressman on air with Aaron Burnett, our colleague, and he said, yes, there do appear to be differences in the facts here, but then he said, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think it's a very human response, right?
Lord, one of the reasons we wanted you to come in was, aside from this, if you want it to be aside from this, if you think it's somehow connected, let me know. CNN has got reported that Joe Biden is perhaps moving ever closer to announcing that he is going to run for re-election. Now, normally for an incumbent president, this would be like a non-news story. With Joe Biden, it is more of an issue because just of his age and because he has answered questions about running against somewhat differently than other presidents in the past. What do you make of the win that he may think he has at his back after the midterms and where he is right now?
Yeah, I mean, he does think he has wind at his back, and he has good reasons to believe that. I mean, he had a pretty extraordinary last 2 years legislatively, more accomplishments than I think anyone would have expected in such a closely divided, with such a narrow margin in the Senate, particularly. So, look, and very few incumbent presidents don't see themselves as running for a second term. I mean, the last time we had an incumbent president not run again was Lyndon Johnson. And he made the calculation that his, commitments to progress for the country were more important than his politics. Totally different time. I don't think there's any world in which Joe Biden doesn't run again. And even in the context of this kind of noise, which is how he's going to see it, he's mostly been Teflon guy for the last 2 years. Everything that Republicans have tried to throw against him have not stuck. And we saw the evidence of that in the midterms. Democrats came very close. My calculation, it's about 6,750 votes from having held on to the majority. Republicans won 3 million more votes in the midterms overall, but just 6,000 more seats, 6,000 more votes would have actually gotten them 5 more seats. Some of those races were that close. So I think he looks at the map. He looks at some of the states like Michigan, et cetera, that have gone even more blue than they were when he ran in 20, and he'd be crazy not to run. He does have an obligation, though, to the next generation, and I think that's one of the lessons of Pelosi stepping down when she did, right? There's a big bench. Democrats want to see a new generation. So if he's doing it again, he's going to have to make big investments into the next generation in his party.
Interesting to see how he chooses to do that. Thank you all very much. The Atlanta